The Galactic Union had watched Earth for a very long time. Their observation ship sat at the edge of the solar system, hidden behind the cold rocks of the outer planets. For 300 years, they recorded everything. They watched humans fight wars over small pieces of land. They watched them build simple rockets that barely reached their own moon. They watched them send radio signals into space, telling everyone exactly where they lived. The Union thought humans were stupid. They thought humans were weak. In all their reports they wrote the same thing: no threat, primitive species, not worth contact. Admiral One was in charge of the observation fleet. He was old and had seen many species rise and fall across the galaxy. To him, Earth was just another primitive world that would either destroy itself or be conquered by someone stronger. He did not care which happened first. When the Dominion announced their plan to invade Earth, the Union held a meeting. They were cruel. They traveled from world to world, taking whatever they wanted. They harvested other species for their biological resources. It was ugly work, but the Union did not stop them. They were too powerful, and Earth was too unimportant. "Should we warn the humans?" one delegate asked. "Why?" another replied. "They cannot fight, they cannot run. Warning them would only cause panic. Let them die in peace." Admiral One agreed. He sent his final report to the Union Council. "The fleet will arrive at Earth in 30 days. Expected resistance? None. Expected outcome? Total harvest. Recommend we observe and document for scientific purposes." They came with 400 warships. Their fleet was massive, a dark cloud of metal and weapons that blocked out the stars. They sent a message to Earth, demanding complete surrender. They gave humans 1 day to respond. The whole galaxy waited. They expected crying. They expected begging. They expected humans to fall on their knees and pray for mercy. But Earth was silent. No response came, no transmissions, no pleas, nothing. The commander, a tall creature with skin and 6 eyes, grew angry. He thought the humans were too scared to even speak. He ordered his fleet to move closer, past the moon, into position for the harvest. "Stupid creatures," he said to his officers. "They do not even have the courage to face death with words." But deep beneath the surface of Earth, in a bunker carved into the mountains of Korea, something was happening. The bunker was huge, stretching for kilometers in every direction. Thousands of people worked there, monitoring screens and checking systems that the outside world knew nothing about. Fleet Commander stood at the center of it all. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Her mother had trained for it. Her grandmother had trained for it. For 80 years, her family had been part of the secret. Around her stood officers from 12 different countries: Americans, Russians, Chinese, Europeans, Africans, and more. They wore no national flags. They served only one thing: Earth. "Commander," said Captain, a young man with a serious face, "the fleet has crossed lunar orbit. They will reach weapons range in 4 hours." Looked at the main screen. It showed the enemy ships, hundreds of red dots moving slowly toward the blue circle that was Earth. She had seen this image in simulations 1,000 times. Now it was real. "What about the Union observation fleet?" she asked. "Still at the edge of the system. They are watching." Nodded. Of course they were watching. They had always been watching. For centuries, they had looked at Earth and seen nothing but animals playing with fire. They had no idea what was really happening beneath the surface. In 1947, a small alien probe had crashed in the American desert. The governments of the world recovered it in secret. They studied it. They learned that humanity was not alone, and that the galaxy was a dangerous place. In 1983, they intercepted alien communications for the first time. They learned about the Union, about 100 other species that saw Earth as nothing more than a resource to be taken. In 2001, they found wreckage of an alien warship floating in the asteroid belt. They brought it back to Earth secretly. They took it apart piece by piece. They learned how it worked. And then they started building. Project Horizon, Project Leviathan, Project Final Answer. They built ships in secret, hiding them in mountains, under oceans, inside hollowed-out asteroids. They studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They combined ideas from 17 different civilizations. They created weapons that even the most advanced species had forgotten. All of this happened while the world above continued its normal life. Wars were fought. Elections were held. People argued about politics and sports and celebrities. Nobody knew that beneath their feet, humanity was preparing for the war that would decide everything. Checked her watch. The time had come. "All stations," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Begin awakening sequence. It is time to show them what we really are." Across the planet, something began to move. Mountains split open. Ocean floors cracked apart. In the asteroid belt, rocks that had been silent for decades suddenly came alive with power. They did not notice. The Union did not notice. They would soon. Looked at her officers. These men and women had given their lives to this secret. They had worked in darkness so that humanity could survive. "Today," she said, "the galaxy learns the truth about Earth. Today they learn that we are not prey." She pressed a button on her console. "All ships," she commanded, "rise." Lieutenant had never seen the sun with her own eyes. She was born in an underground city, raised in metal corridors, and trained in simulation rooms that showed her stars she could not touch. Her whole life had been spent preparing for a day that might never come. But today, that day had finally arrived. She stood on the bridge of a battleship so large that it took her 10 minutes to walk from one end to the other. The ship was 2 kilometers long, covered in armor that could stop almost any weapon. Inside, 5,000 crew members worked in perfect silence, each one knowing their job, each one ready to die for Earth. "Awakening sequence complete," reported a technician. "All systems online, weapons charged, shields at full power." Looked at the main screen. It showed the inside of a mountain, dark rock walls pressing close around the ship. For 50 years they had slept here, waiting. Now it was time to wake up. A deep rumbling sound filled the ship. The mountain above them was opening, millions of tons of rock sliding apart to reveal the sky. Light poured in, the first natural light had ever seen inside the vessel. "Beautiful," whispered the officer next to her. Did not reply. She was thinking about her grandmother who had helped design this ship. She was thinking about her mother who had died testing its weapons. 3 generations of her family had given everything to Project Leviathan. Now she would see if their sacrifice was worth it. Across the planet, the same scene repeated. In the Himalayas, 4 battleships rose from hidden bases carved into the frozen peaks. In the Pacific Ocean, a dozen cruisers emerged from underwater facilities, water streaming from their hulls as they climbed toward space. In the Australian outback, fast attack craft shot out of underground tunnels like bullets from a gun. But the greatest surprise waited in the asteroid belt. For decades, humanity had been sending secret missions to the rocks that floated between Mars and Jupiter. They told the world these were mining operations. In truth, they were building the largest ships ever made by human hands. These were the dreadnoughts, the giants of humanity's fleet. Each one was 5 kilometers long, carrying weapons powerful enough to crack a moon. They had been built inside asteroids, using the rock itself as cover. Now they emerged, splitting their stone shells and moving toward Earth. Commander watched from this bridge as her fleet assembled. 47 battleships, 200 cruisers, 1,000 fast-attack craft, years of secret work finally revealed. "All ships reporting ready," said Captain. "Fleet formation complete." Nodded. The numbers were smaller than the fleet, but numbers were not everything. Humanity had learned from the best teachers in the galaxy, the aliens themselves. Every crashed probe, every lost ship, every piece of debris that drifted through the solar system had been collected and studied. The Union used plasma weapons. Humanity had built better ones. They used magnetic shields. Humanity had learned to break them. There were weapons in the human fleet that no one in the galaxy had seen for 10,000 years. The ancients had used them in wars that were now forgotten. Humanity had found their secrets in the wreckage of a dead civilization and brought them back to life. Commander said, "The fleet is changing formation. I think they finally see us." Smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of someone who had waited a very long time for this moment. The main screen showed the ships scrambling. Red dots moved in confusion, breaking their neat lines as commanders shouted orders at each other. They had expected to find a primitive world with no defense. Instead, they found a fleet that should not exist. The commander sent a transmission to the Union observation fleet. His 6 eyes were wide with shock. "They have ships," he said, his voice shaking. "They have real warships, advanced warships. Why did you not tell us?" Admiral 1, watching from his safe position at the edge of the solar system, could not answer. He stared at his screens, unable to believe what he was seeing. Every report, every observation, every conclusion he had made over 300 years was wrong. The humans were not primitive. They had been hiding. Opened a channel to her entire fleet. Her face appeared on every screen, in every ship, seen by every human who had dedicated their life to this secret. "This is Fleet Commander," she said. "For 80 years we have worked in darkness. We have sacrificed our lives, our families, our very existence to reach this moment. The enemy thinks we are weak. The galaxy thinks we are nothing. Today, we show them the truth." She paused, looking at the images of ships filling her screens. "No mercy," she said. "No surrender. We fight for Earth. We fight for everyone who came before us. We fight for every human who will come after us." She raised her hand. "All ships engage." The human fleet surged forward, engines blazing, weapons charging, ready to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The first shot came from the captain stood on his bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on his screens. He had trained for this moment in simulators 1,000 times, but simulations could not prepare him for the feeling of real war. "Main cannon ready," his weapons officer reported. "Fire," said. The shook as a beam of pure white energy shot from its bow. The weapon was called a lance, a technology so old that most species had forgotten it existed. It bent space itself, crushing anything in its path. The beam hit 3 ships at once. Their shields flickered for half a second, then collapsed. The ships crumpled like paper, folding in on themselves before exploding in silence. Across the battlefield, human ships opened fire. Plasma bolts, rail gun rounds, missiles with warheads that burned hotter than stars. The formation broke apart as ship after ship was destroyed. They tried to fight back. Their weapons were powerful, designed to conquer worlds, but humanity had studied those weapons for decades. They knew every strength and every weakness. "Incoming fire," a technician shouted on the. Commander did not flinch. "Activate null shields." A shimmer of energy wrapped around the plasma bolts hit the shield and simply disappeared, absorbed into nothing. The null shield was humanity's greatest achievement, a defense system built from technology found in the wreckage of an ancient war. No one in the modern galaxy knew how to break it. "Return fire," ordered, "all batteries." The gun spoke. Dozens of fighters vanished in balls of flame. A cruiser tried to turn away and was cut in half by a focused beam. On the Union observation ship, Admiral 1 watched in horror. His tactical officer, Sira, stood beside him, her hands shaking as she read the data on her screen. "They are using lances," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Those weapons have not been seen since the ancient war. Where did they get them?" They built them, one replied. He felt sick. They found our debris, our lost probes, our crashed ships. They took everything apart and learned how it worked. They taught themselves. But that would take centuries of research. They are only humans. One shook his head. We were wrong about them. We were wrong about everything. In the center of the battle, the flagship tried to rally the remaining ships. The commander screamed orders, trying to form a defensive line, but his captains were panicking. Half of them had already turned to run. Captain saw the flagship from the bridge of the. She was a small woman with cold eyes and steady hands. She had lost her father in a training accident 10 years ago. Her mother had died building the engines of this very ship. She had no family left, no life outside the fleet. But she had her mission. Navigation, she said. Prepare for tactical jump. Her navigation officer looked at her with wide eyes. Captain, the jump drive is experimental. We have never used it in combat. Today we do. Calculate the coordinates. Put us directly in front of that flagship. The jump drive was humanity's weapon. It folded space, allowing a ship to move from one point to another instantly. No other species in the galaxy had mastered this technology. Humanity had built it from theories, from fragments of ancient data, from years of failed tests that killed hundreds of brave volunteers. The vanished. For 1 second, the ship simply did not exist. Then it reappeared, directly in the path of the fleeing flagship. The enemy commander had no time to react. He saw the human ship appear from nothing. He saw its weapons glow with power. He opened his mouth to give an order. He never finished. The fired everything. Beams, missiles, rail-gun rounds, all striking the flagship at once. The massive vessel exploded in a storm of fire and metal. The commander died without knowing what had killed him. With their leader gone, the fleet collapsed completely. Some ships surrendered, dropping their shields and sending desperate pleas for mercy. Others tried to run, pushing their engines to maximum as they fled toward the edge of the solar system. They did not get far. Lieutenant commanded a squadron of fast-attack craft, small ships built for speed and killing. She chased the fleeing through the darkness of space, picking them off one by one. That is the last one, her pilot reported as another enemy ship exploded. Checked her screens. The battle was over. Hundreds of ships had been destroyed. The few survivors had surrendered and were being collected by human cruisers. She looked at the time on her console. 11 minutes. The entire battle had taken 11 minutes. 80 years of preparation. 3 generations of sacrifice. Thousands of lives dedicated to this moment. And it had ended in 11 minutes. Commander's voice came through the communication system. She sounded tired but satisfied. All ships, this is Fleet Commander. The enemy is defeated. Secure prisoners and begin rescue operations. Today, humanity has proven that we are not victims. Leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. Somewhere above her, through the metal hull of her ship, the stars were shining. She had never seen them with her own eyes before. Maybe now she finally would. The great hall of the Galactic Union was silent. Hundreds of delegates from 100 different species sat in their seats, staring at the images on the main screen. They watched the Battle of Earth play again and again, seeing the impossible happen each time. 400 warships destroyed in 11 minutes, by humans, by the primitives they had watched and laughed at for centuries. Delegate was the first to speak. He was a tall creature with blue skin and a face that showed no emotion, but his voice trembled slightly as he addressed the council. "This changes everything," he said. The Dominion was one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. Their fleet could have conquered any 3 of our member worlds, and the humans destroyed them in less time than it takes to eat a meal. Murmurs filled the hall. Delegates whispered to each other, their translators working overtime to handle a dozen different languages. "How did they do this?" asked another delegate. "Our reports said they were primitive. Our observations showed nothing but chemical rockets and simple satellites. Admiral 1 stood before the council, his uniform feeling heavy on his shoulders. He had been summoned to explain his failure, to answer for 300 years of wrong conclusions. "They hid from us," he said. "They knew we were watching and they hid everything. Their real technology, their real ships, their real capabilities. Everything was underground, underwater, or hidden in space. We saw only what they wanted us to see." "That is impossible," a delegate shouted. "No primitive species could fool our observation technology." "They are not primitive," one replied. "They never were. They found our probes. They collected our debris. They studied every piece of alien technology that entered their solar system. They learned from us and then they surpassed us." The council fell silent again. This was the truth that no one wanted to accept. Humanity had not just matched the galaxy's technology. They had exceeded it. They were using weapons that even the oldest species had forgotten. "What do we do now?" asked. "If they decide to expand, if they decide to take revenge for our indifference, we cannot stop them." "We quarantine them," said another delegate. "We surround their system with every ship we have. We prevent them from leaving. We contain the threat." "And how long will that work?" replied. "They have jump drives. They appeared from nothing during the battle. Our blockade would mean nothing to them." Arguments filled the hall. Delegates shouted at each other, blaming one, blaming everyone except themselves. Fear had taken hold of them, and fear made them foolish. Then the main screen flickered. A new image appeared, pushing aside the battle recordings. A human face looked out at the council. It was a woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She wore a military uniform marked with a symbol the delegates did not recognize, a blue circle with a single star at its center. "This is Fleet Commander of the United Earth Defense Force," she said. "I am transmitting to the Galactic Union Council directly. I know you are watching." The hall went completely silent, every eye focused on the screen. "For 300 years you watched our planet," continued. "You studied us like animals in a cage. You wrote reports about how primitive we were, how weak, how unimportant. When they came to harvest us, you did nothing. You decided our lives were not worth saving." Her voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. "We are not angry. We understand how the galaxy works. The strong survive and the weak perish. We knew this truth before we ever met you. Our own history taught us that lesson many times." She paused, letting her words settle. "But we are not weak. We simply had no reason to show you our strength until now. We built our fleet in secret because we knew that revealing it would make us a target. We waited because we were not ready. Now we are ready." Behind her, through a large window, the human fleet was visible. Dozens of massive battleships hung in perfect formation, their weapons dark but ready. It was a display of power meant to send a message. "Humanity will be joining the galactic community," said. "We will not ask for permission. We will not beg for membership. We will take our place among you as equals. We will trade fairly, negotiate honestly, and respect those who respect us." Her eyes seemed to look directly at each delegate, one at a time. "But let me be clear about one thing. Earth is not a resource to be harvested. Our people are not animals to be studied. If anyone threatens our world, our colonies, or our people, they will face the same fate as the—" She smiled. It was not a warm smile. "We have more ships, we have more weapons, and we have 80 years of plans for every possible enemy. Do not test us." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. For a long moment no one spoke. Then slowly delegates stood up. "I move that we formally recognize Earth as a sovereign power," he said, "and that we begin immediate diplomatic relations." No one argued, no one dared. The vote was unanimous. 3 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. Captain stood on the bridge of her new ship, She had earned her command through years of service, through battles fought and missions completed. Now she was one of the most respected officers in the fleet. Through her viewport she could see the planet below. It was green and blue, covered with forests and oceans. Once it had been the capital world of the Dominion. Now it was free. After the Battle of Earth, the Empire had collapsed. Their subject species, seeing that the mighty Dominion could be defeated, rose up against their masters. Rebellion spread across 100 worlds. The weakened and leaderless could not stop them. Now the former slaves were building new societies, and humanity was helping them. "Captain," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. They are requesting humanitarian aid. Food, medicine, building materials." Nodded. The war was over, but the suffering was not. Millions of people on this planet needed help, including themselves. They had been cruel rulers, but their children were innocent. Humanity had no interest in revenge. "Contact the relief fleet," she ordered. "Tell them to send everything they have. We will coordinate distribution from orbit." This was the new mission of Earth's fleet. Not conquest, not domination, but protection and aid. The ships that had been built for war were now used to carry food to hungry planets, medicine to sick populations, and hope to those who had none. But the fleet was still ready to fight. Some species had not learned the lesson of the 6 months ago, a coalition of pirate fleets had attacked a human colony on the edge of explored space. They thought Earth was too far away to respond quickly. They were wrong. Admiral, she had been promoted after the battle, had ordered the Second Fleet to respond. 12 battleships jumped across half the galaxy in seconds, appearing above the colony just as the pirates began their attack. The battle lasted 3 minutes. No pirates survived. The message was clear: attack humanity and you will be destroyed. They received a new communication. This one was from Earth, from the office of the Admiral herself. "Captain," the message read, "report to Earth Station 1 for reassignment. You have been selected for a special mission. Details will be provided upon arrival." Admiral felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Special missions from the Admiral were never simple. They were dangerous, important, and often secret. She handed command to her first officer and took a shuttle back to Earth. The journey took only a few hours, thanks to the jump gates that humanity had built throughout their new territory. Earth Station 1 was massive, a ring of metal and glass that circled the planet. It was the center of human expansion, the gateway to the stars. Ships came and went constantly, carrying traders, diplomats, soldiers, and colonists. Found Admiral in her office at the top of the station. The Admiral looked older than she had during the battle, her hair now streaked with gray. But her eyes were still sharp, still full of the fire that had led humanity to victory. "Captain," said, "thank you for coming, please sit." Sat, she noticed a star map on the wall showing human territory. It had grown so much in 3 years. 17 colonies, dozens of outposts, trade agreements with 42 species. "We have come far," said, following her gaze. "Farther than I ever imagined when I gave the order to rise." "Yes, Admiral, it is hard to believe." Smiled. "I remember watching you during the battle. You were so young, so scared, but you did your duty. That is all we can ever ask." "I was scared," admitted. "I'm still scared sometimes. The galaxy is so big and there is so much we do not know. That is why I called you here." Stood and walked to the star map. She pointed to a region at the edge where the stars were thin and darkness stretched into infinity. "We have detected something out there. Signals, ancient and strange. They do not match any known species." Felt a chill. Another civilization. Perhaps, or perhaps something older, something from before the ancient war. Turned to face her. "I need someone I trust to investigate, someone brave enough to face the unknown, someone who understands what it means to protect Earth." Understood, this was not just a mission, it was a test. The galaxy had accepted humanity, but challenges would always come. New threats, new mysteries, new enemies. "I will do it," she said. "Whatever is out there, I will find it." Nodded, satisfaction in her eyes. "I knew you would say that. Your grandmother helped design our first ships. Your mother gave her life testing our weapons, and you have proven yourself worthy of their legacy." She placed a hand on shoulder. "We were afraid once," the Admiral said. "We hid in the dark, building our ships, preparing for the worst, but we are not hiding anymore. We are explorers now, protectors, leaders. The galaxy looked at us and saw prey. They were wrong." She smiled, the same cold smile she had shown to the Union 3 years ago. "They know what we are now, survivors, fighters, and the only species brave enough to face whatever is waiting in the darkness." Saluted. Outside the window, the stars were shining. Somewhere out there, in the vast emptiness between galaxies, something was waiting to be discovered. And humanity would find it first.